I work as a mortician and funeral director. The worst incident I had was never actually with someone that was dead, but rather a customer that we had come to pay a visit. This person was burying their father. They were from a big family, and this guy had like 8 kids. Pretty good run, to be honest. He lived until he was 89, an age that I think most people aspire to live to. One of his sons, though, was in his late 30s and looked like a combination between Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Incredible Hulk. This guy was huge and at least 6'6". He came in and was telling me all about his dad, obviously very upset. We were making arrangements for the funeral and such, and the father had requested a cremation. So we're sorting out all the paperwork, and the guy starts to cry. I try to comfort him as best I can, saying that his father was probably a lovely man, and that he's probably at peace now. When I said that his father was a lovely man and at peace, he looked me dead in the eyes, and the raw anger and fury in this guy's eyes, the likes of which I'd never seen in my profession before, engulfed him. He looked at me and said, "How dare you speak about my father? You never even knew him. How dare you think that? He was a great man, greater than anything you could ever expect." I expected him to continue ranting, but before I knew it, he slammed me into a wall and punched me repeatedly in the chest. Punch after punch after punch. It only took him a few swings before he realized I was out cold. And I remember waking up a few minutes later on the wall, surrounded by my colleagues. The guy had driven off, I assumed to cool down. The police were called and came over. My colleagues ended up calling an ambulance. I found it hard to breathe, but fortunately there was no bleeding. I was taken to hospital and was given the all clear. And I told my colleagues that I was not dealing with that guy. Honestly, part of me really wanted to do something cruel and send them to another morticianer, but I knew that that would be too much. When you lose someone, it's normal to overreact. Just please don't take it out on us. We didn't kill your family. We're just trying to help you. I didn't see the guy again, but one of my co-workers did tell me that he came back and was super apologetic. But still, that didn't mean he could just go attacking someone willy-nilly. I was okay. I had to take a few days off because of the bruising, and I found it a little bit hard to breathe, but it healed up. For those few seconds though, when he had me against the wall and he was pounding his fists into me like a piece of meat, I was worried that I was going to be filling one of those caskets a lot sooner than I had anticipated. I worked with morticianers for a while, although I never actually did their job. My job was to bury the caskets. It's not a difficult task, but there was one point that really changed things up for me. The guy who owned this plot had 1,000+ spaces in the cemetery. My boss helped me down to the grave and casually asked me to hand him the casket. When I looked, it was barely bigger than a microwave. I did so, and the image of my 2-year-old son was flashing through my eyes. I couldn't take it. I quit a week later. He understood, and we're still friends today. The heaviest coffins are always the smallest. It kind of reminded me of something my friend told me actually. His older brother died at birth, and he always grew up knowing that because his parents talked about him, and they had a few photos of him around the house, and they would always visit him at the cemetery. I even actually went as well once with him, and he never really realised anything until he came across a baby book while snooping for Christmas presents. It was his brother's baby book. It started all happy and normal, because his mum obviously started it off when she was pregnant. But when he died, it turned into a memorial of sorts. The ink imprints of his little feet that they do at birth made him very real to him. And it struck him that he had a brother that he never got to know, and that their parents had a baby that they never got to raise. Hospitals are creepy places in general. This is a story that happened to my dad. He's been a nurse for over 20 years now, most of which was spent in the ER. For a while though, he was working the third shift at this old hospital in Chicago. One night, a man died, and my dad was left with the lovely task of pushing the guy on a gurney to the hospital's morgue. This next part sounds so cliche, because it's something straight out of a B horror film. It was all poorly lit. The hall, tile walls and floor were dark, and there was complete silence except for the footsteps of my father and the squeaky wheel of the gurney as they went across the hall. To top it all off, it was an old creepy hospital in the middle of the night. Of course, the body had gone stiff at this point, and the man's arm had kept sliding out from underneath the sheet and hanging down. So my father has to repeatedly put the arm back up, and without fail, a few steps down the line it will fall back down. Nothing supernatural. But my dad still has nightmares about it. Because when he went to pull the sheet down on one occasion, the man was smiling up at my dad. He has so many awful stories about the things he's seen. The poor guy has PTSD. I used to work in a hospital, in the IT department, and we did a number of overnight rollouts, as well as on-call work, and response when issues occurred overnight. Many weird things happened, or appeared to happen. The thing that struck me as oddest was when I saw the coroner running at full speed down the corridor in the opposite direction towards the morgue. This guy, an older guy in his 50s or so, was going at full speed. I had never seen him have to amble before, but this time he was really going for it. As he got close to me, he yelled out, "Out of the way! I've got another live one!" I'm not sure what was more disturbing, the fact that he was dealing with what I could only assume was a dead body, and now appeared to be alive, or the fact that he said, "another." After a bit of research, I found out that it's actually a lot more complex than you might think. Just because your heart isn't beating doesn't mean you can't be revived, even several hours after it stops. This is because if your body is cold enough, your cells do not die, kind of like cryostasis. If you can heat the body, as well as give the cells the proper amount of oxygen, the cells do not burst and you can survive. This happened to a guy who fell through ice and led to breakthrough research. Also, being totally brain dead does not mean your body is dead as well. This is a matter of opinion, really. Without being blown into a billion little pieces, it's a real bitch to pronounce someone dead in the modern world. This was my first strange experience at work, when I started my embalming career. I worked at an independent mortuary service, and I had just started my shift and was using a restroom in the back. When I came out, I heard what sounded like a girl sobbing, and the sound of feet shuffling around on the floor. The floor was kind of gravelly, and had a very distinct sound if you scutted your feet on it. The sound was coming from around the corner that led to a small room where we would store embalmed bodies, ready to be delivered to their respective funeral homes. I figured someone was upset and crying, so I kind of snuck in and could still hear the sobbing. I was worried that someone had sneaked in and thought that they were going to get into trouble, so I was ready to give someone spiel to get out ASAP. But when I peeked around the corner, the room was empty. There was no living person in there. I noticed that there was only one body in it as well. A young girl. She shot herself on the side of the head. I wasn't scared per se, but I'm pretty sure you could audibly hear my heartbeat. I closed the door and went on with my day. That really got me thinking about the afterlife after that. We never saw those girls again. I didn't even know who they were to begin with. I just hope it wasn't them in the smoke later that day. I'm sure I would have heard something on the news. A shout out to the girls if you're watching to the video right now. I just want to say, I'm sorry for leaving you in the dust. My bad.